Hi all and welcome to another week of the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. We have the usual stuff. There's a little bit of intel, some sobering stuff, I have to say. And if you are a full-on supporter of Trump, you won't like this show. Just won't. So we'll get into that because things haven't gone the way we thought it would do early this year, and we'll be covering some of that as to why in the intel, and hopefully we have something to look forward to, because things are getting dodgy at the moment. It's getting rather nasty, it's getting really ugly, and threats are coming in left, right and centre. Including this week I got a nasty reminder from the parent known as Cassandra. A car tried to run me off the road on Monday in two separate incidents, and the second car registration plate was called Piglets. Those of you who remember the Cassandra letter will know what that means. Well, us piglets, you can call us what you like, I've done a lot in so many ways to fight back. So many of you have learnt new things over the last 4 or 5, 6, 7 years from various shows, not just this one. It's led to an increase of desperation. And they're in desperation, make no mistake about that. The fact that they're spending so much time writing cryptic blogs to distract people says it all, in my opinion. The fact that they're spending so much time coming up with memes of fake news, again, to muddy the waters, because too many people are starting to see through the illusion. And that's all down to us. Nobody else has done it. We chose to take the more difficult path and learn the truth. It's not pleasant. In fact, most of it's ugly, to be honest. And some of the shows I've done, you come away, I come at the end of it and think, oh, dear God, how long does this go on? But we all have a common goal, that we want to see a better planet, a better people, better country, from whichever country you're operating or living in from at the moment. Better life with better education, better food, better water, better health, and an actual future for the children. Because currently they have none. The advancement of negative technology, and most of it is negative. It's either a distraction format or spyware, data mining, and in some cases mind-altering frequencies. What chance do the kids have going forward with a country, this country in particular, that's completely bankrupt? In fact, all countries, you'll find out later, are bankrupt. And there's a rather disturbing figure at the end of this the news piece, which I'll get into now. And maybe that might trigger some of the clowns, probably not, and the insane ones, which are getting more and more insane by the week. Desperation and fear of losing control does that to people. Did it to the Draco also. Oh boy, they lost it. That's why he left. That's why the parents left. So Cassandra can play games all she liked. The reality is they couldn't handle the new frequencies. Oops. That's why they all went insane. Right, let's get into the news portion of the show. And the email for the show is truth.honor.and.integrity@gmail.com. The link for the show is www.spreaker.com/user 895-5881. And the articles website, which also includes some of the more special shows we've done, all 9 of them. That gives you, if you watch, or not watch, listen to those 9, it gives you an overview if you've only joined the show in the last couple of months, and explains a lot of things that have, were kind of ahead of its time in some of those shows. And you can also listen live there, and all the archived shows are there as well. And that's thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org. We have a Facebook social media alternative called MeWe.com. If you want to private message me or send it to the Truth, Honor and Integrity at Gmail, and we'll add you to that group. I don't think the Facebook page will last this year. You know, we put too much out in our show. And it's, as people will notice, it is ahead of time in many cases, some of the intel. And they don't like it. David Icke went this week, and I expect more will follow. And I have a story on Facebook. Maybe that's why we set MeWe up, because I don't think our page will survive the culling. And we also have the People's Club donations website link called thepeoplesclub.org. It's all about the foundation when we get rid of clowns and insane people. News. Oh boy, this is depressing, this news. I have to say it. But it brings things into focus. And that's the reason I picked these stories out. And the first one is the Trump administration. And Mr. Trump will get a lot of the blame for it. And I've blamed him for a lot of things. But the reality is, when I say Trump and the administration, it's the system that's wrong. But also, there's elements of Trump being an issue, and I'll cover that later. So the Trump administration last Thursday, in its wisdom, or perhaps not, said it would allow new offshore oil and gas drilling in nearby all United States coastal waters, giving energy companies access to leases off California for the first time in decades. You know, there's a fault line there, and they want to drill. Really? Oh dear. This is the levels of insanity. And they're also considering opening more than 1 billion acres in the Arctic and along the eastern seaboard. The proposal lifts a ban on such drilling imposed by Barack Obama near the end of his failed term. And obviously they have no interest in creating any environmental legacies of improving it whatsoever. So it signals that the Trump administration is not done unravelling environmental restrictions in an effort to promote energy production. Far from it. While the plan puts the administration squarely on the side of the energy industry and against environmental groups, it also put the White House at odds with a number of coastal states, including this one, Florida. And the governor, who's also rogue, but has actually made a complaint this time, Rick Scott, It said the tourism industry in Florida was hit hard by the Deepwater Horizon rig disaster in 2010, which killed 11 people, interesting number, and spilled millions of gallons of oil into the Gulf of Mexico, which they're still cleaning up 8 years later. You know, there's a couple of things here. We have alternative energy. We haven't really needed oil or electric pylons for the last 100 years. These people are not only causing environmental disaster, they're also stifling the advancement of humanity with energy. Just that one subject. And the lunacy of drilling anywhere around California literally flies off the charts. It's rumbling day after day, and you think it's going to be helpful to that fault line if somebody puts a giant drill in it. I mean, you can't get any more retarded than that. So they're planning 12 sites around Florida. You know, why? Last year, in the middle of last year, they were complaining, for those of you who have long memories, they were complaining there was an oil glut. Americans and other countries weren't using it as much. So why do we need more drilling? Clearly we don't. And clearly this administration is in bed with cabal agents. Just is what it is. Whether Trump has any say in it is debatable, to say the least. But we were promised different. Clearly it's not. And as I said in last week's show, I'm not here to favour one party or the other, or one politician or the other. I'm only here to present the news on behalf of the people. That's all I'm interested in. I'm not interested in Republicans, Democrats, Liberals, Conservative, left, right, and all that other bollocks. It doesn't mean nothing to we the people. It's never produced nothing for we the people. So why should we expect it to produce something now? Because somebody says, I'm draining the swamp. Well, it's 12 months now, and we're still waiting. It's getting almost Drake-esque. So, I'm sorry we'll upset some people, but we can't continue to fall for the same game over and over again, expecting politicians and others to provide for the benefit of the people when they're making decisions like that. Millions to drill when it would be better spent on millions, if not billions, providing food for the American people. 1 in 6 children is below the poverty line. We've got 47 million on food stamps. That's going to increase with the robotic games. Facebook, I told you, this is a fairly long piece, but it needs to be said because this is a sign of things to come. In September last year, Facebook representatives were meeting with the Israeli government to determine which Facebook accounts of Palestinians should be deleted on the grounds that they constituted incitement. Fascism, anyone? The meetings called for and presided over by one of the most extremist and authoritarian Israeli officials, pro-settlement Justice Minister Eilert Shakehead. I'd like to shakehead him, rattle his brains out personally, if he had any. Came after Israel threatened Facebook that its failure to voluntarily comply with Israeli deletion orders would result in the enactment of laws requiring Facebook to do so, upon pain of being severely fined or even blocked in this country. And the predictable results of those threats were, ever since, Facebook has been on a censorship rampage against Palestinian activists who protest the decades-long illegal Israeli occupation, all directed and determined by Israeli officials. In fact, not only that, but Israeli officials have been publicly boasting about how obedient Facebook is when it comes to Israel's censorship orders. Shortly after the news broke, which was early last week, of the agreement between the Israeli government and Facebook, Mr. Shakehead said Tel Aviv had submitted 158 requests to the social media giant over the previous 4 months, asking for it to remove content it deemed incitement. Facebook granted 95% of those 158 requests. And, I mean, how obvious can you get? There was an article in December, New York Times. Some like to play words and call it the Jew York Times, because it's certainly enhanced that way. And I don't mean that in a racist way, because it's nothing against the Jewish people, but the people operating Israel, like the clowns that operate in this country, are doing its people a massive disservice around the world. So the New York Times said last month that Israeli security agencies monitor Facebook. Yes, and I'll give you the name of them. It's called Debka, D-E-B-K-A. They're the ones that have all the shills. And send and basically they send company posts that to Facebook that consider incitement. And 96% of Palestinians have said their primary use of Facebook was for following news. That means the Israeli officials have a virtually unfettered control over a key communications forum of Palestinians. And in the weeks following the Facebook Israeli meetings, the activist collected Palestinian Information Center reported that at least 10 of their administrators' accounts for the Arabic and English Facebook pages, which are followed by more than 2 million people, have been suspended. 2 million people just cut off. And 7 of those 10 administrator accounts have been suspended permanently. Last year, Facebook briefly shut down the Facebook page of the political party Fatah, followed by millions because of an old photo posted the former leader Yasser Arafat holding a rifle. They've also blocked the Palestinian Dialogue Network, Gaza Now, Jerusalem News Network, Shihab Agency, Radio Bethlehem, Orient Radio Network, Page Mesh Heck, Ramallah News, and a load of journalists and activists, too many to mention. And it seems that the Israelis are virtually have free rein to post whatever they want about Palestinians, as calls by Israelis for the killing of Palestinians are commonplace on Facebook and yet largely remain undisturbed. This is the way Facebook's going. Maybe it always was that way. Now they're deciding politics. The Trump administration has now told lawmakers that it wants $18 billion over the next decade for the initial phase of the Mexico border wall, laying out for the first time a detailed financial blueprint for the president's signature campaign promise. The money would pay for 316 miles of new fencing and reinforce another 407 miles where barriers are already in place. Now, according to cost estimates sent to senators on Friday, if the work was completed, more than half of the 2,000-mile border with Mexico would have a wall or other physical structure by 2027. Wonders whether we'll have a planet left by then, the way these clowns are going. Not unsurprisingly, Democratic lawmakers blasted the $18 billion request, first reported by the Wall Street Journal, and it arrived in the middle of delicate budget negotiations that include the risk of a government shutdown if no deal is reached. I'll have more on that in the intel. Here's another. You want to know what pays for the wall? This is what pays for the wall. You've seen it all too frequent over the past 20, 30-ish years. Mr. Trump has begun telling advisors that it would likely be impossible to advance legislation this year to reduce welfare spending and enrollment, a priority he previously embraced with the backing of Speaker Paul Ryan and a number of conservative activists. In conversations with aides and outside advisors in recent days, Trump has said his supporters would embrace the idea, unless it happens to them, but that it remains unlikely because the votes will not be there in Congress and it would be a difficult undertaking in an election year. Now, some of the Republicans want to reduce healthcare costs, want to reduce healthcare, housing and food stamp spending by making it tougher for beneficiaries to receive the dollars. Make of that what you will. Such as through new work requirements. But a number of White House officials and advisors have begun tamping down expectations for any overhaul of social safety net programs, and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has told Trump it's a non-starter in his chamber because he would need the support of the Democrats who currently oppose the idea. So all the jobs are going, and they're trying to cut back on the safety net of benefits of which people pay into. Doesn't sound good, does it? As suspected this year, we would see more and more people resign, and there's another one, this time at the Nazi Security Agency head Admiral Mike Rogers. Yes, I did say that right. Who's now decided he's retiring in the spring. According to a classified memo last Friday, the memo was leaked to a couple of news outlets, and it kind of brings to an end Rogers' 4-year tenure at the NSA, which was marked by high-profile intelligence leaks and efforts to prevent them. Good. He was brought in the aftermath of the Edward Snowden bombshell and his particular NSA leaks, and Rogers was tasked with making sure nothing of the sort ever happened again. You think he would spend more time actually doing something useful, because if he weren't doing something corrupt, we wouldn't need Edward Snowden's or Julian Assange. All that money wasted to protect leaks of corruption. He should have been fired. And apparently he wasn't too successful at it. Though he stayed on under President Trump, Rogers didn't always see eye to eye with his new boss, and Trump reportedly asked him last year to publicly state that his campaign did not collude with Russia, but Rogers wouldn't do it. His replacement, or next stooge, will be announced later this month. The immigration malarkey goes on. Funny how we flood in 250,000 Puerto Ricans, and he's telling all kinds of other ones to get out. Again, it doesn't make much sense. Anyway, the administration has decided to cancel permits that allow nearly 200,000 people from El Salvador to live and work in the United States currently. They were granted temporary protected status after earthquakes rocked the Central American country in 2001. Obviously, they didn't want them to go back either. So the people of El Salvador have been told they have until 2019 to leave or face deportation unless they find a legal way to stay. And the Trump administration has already approved TPS protection from tens of thousands of Haitians and also Nicaraguans. You've seen the pattern. Hope so. Central America, countries being emptied out. Here's some sobering figures. As of the end of 2016, it's got worse since then. I'm still waiting for last year's. In what was described by the government, current administration and previous, and so-called financial experts. Yeah, right. In a period of so-called coordinated growth, global debt hit a new all-time high of 217 trillion. That's 327% over and above the global GDP. Now that's up 50 trillion in the past decade alone. That's near enough a quarter in the past decade. And then I do have the latest figures of Bullhorn. The figures that came out for the end of the third quarter of 2017. So it was 217 trillion at the end of last year. The latest figure is the global debt rose to 233 trillion. That's up 16 trillion in 9 months. $63 trillion in government, 58 trillion in financial circles, 68 trillion in non-financial, and 44 trillion in household sectors, a total of increase of 16 trillion in just 9 months. What this reflects is what I've been telling you. is the government is bankrupt. A lot of the governments are bankrupt, and they're operating on fake credit to give them enough time to roll out the RV, which, as you'll know, will never happen. Here's another example of poor behaviour and bullying and controlling tactics, where people are not allowed to speak up, and freedom of speech is like a byword these days. A Louisiana teacher this week who spoke out against the superintendent's new contract was handcuffed and arrested during a school board meeting in an incident that was caught on video this week. At the meeting, Daisha Hargrave brought up the issue of the teacher's salary and raises for the teacher or teachers that was included in a new contract for the superintendent. As per usual, the teachers got overlooked and the board members get increases. Now, the board members told NBC News this week that a meeting was called to vote on whether to approve a new contract for Superintendent Jermone Payou, and the final version of the contract that was approved included a $30,000 raise for the superintendent, taking his salary from $110,000 to $140,000 to sit on a school board. $140,000 to sit on a school board. What's that? About four teachers' pay for one clown to push a pen. Now, Ms. Hargrave was booked into Abbeville City Jail on Monday on charges of resisting an officer. Quite why we've got cops in schools is beyond me. And remaining on the premises after being forbidden there. As it turns out, all charges were later dropped. Go figure. Shut your mouth and you can go. Sound familiar? Yeah, happens in government, agencies and military and police stations. Well, of course, there's been big news this week that's broke about a certain book that the White House chief strategist Steve Bannon had drafted and was published. Fire and Fury, I think it was called. And some of the things that was linked around it, if proven correct, and I'm led to believe that they are, raises serious concerns about the current administration. It kind of echoes what I said back in 2015. We'll have more on that later. Steve Bannon told the guy who wrote the book that Ivanka Trump was terrified the FBI investigation into alleged Russian meddling into the election would lead where it would lead. Her and Kushner are in it up to their necks. The statement was the kids, Jared and Ivanka, exhibited an increasingly panicked sense that the FBI and DOJ were moving beyond Russian election interference and more into family finances. Oops. Further news, which is, again, I can confirm this, is Mr. Trump's first foreign trip abroad. He visited Saudi Arabia, where I think, if I remember it right, I put the article in the show when it took place and questioned it then. And he secured a $110 billion arms deal for the United States. The Saudis then threw a $75 million party in his honour and drove the first family around in gold golf carts, according to the book. Not unlike displaying your wealth. Now, despite a long-standing relationship with the then Crown Prince Mohammed bin Nayef, Mr. Kushner developed a relationship with a 32-year-old Mohammed bin Salman. Now, Mohammed bin Salman was invited to visit the White House last March, but he was using his Trump embrace as part of his own power play in the kingdom, and as you all now know, Mr. Salman ousted Mr. Nayef. And that's because of Kushner and his roles. And also in the book, the Trump White House, Bannon allegedly grew increasingly frustrated by National Security Advisor Mr. McMaster and his views on the 16-year-old war in Afghanistan, now 17 years. As it stands now, Mr. McMaster wants to send more troops to Afghanistan. Really? Well, Mr. McMaster was one of those that went to Gitmo recently. But it wasn't arresting cabal members, it was a cabal meeting. Oops. Announced today, again, more unpleasantness. The House of Representatives has approved a law allowing US spy agencies to continue intercepting Americans' private communications. President Donald Trump prompted confusion before the vote with a tweet claiming the program had been used to abuse his campaign. Well, what about the 320 million Americans, Mr. Trump? Why is everything about I and me? Not us and we. Anyway, the legislation passed 256 to 164. Despite opposition from both sides, the no votes included 45 Republicans. And critics say the bill actually expands government powers to spy on Americans. Go figure. The Act's passage follows a year-long debate about the power scope of US electronic wiretapping after the 2013 links of surveillance secrets by former NSA contractor Edward Snowden. They just distract you and then add more bills in, and it gets worse. Okay, for time. This is quite a serious story, but I'm seriously beginning to question what the hell's in the water at Texas, because the politicians there, I can't remember the second bill, that was completely ridiculous, but the first one was the one of the senators in Texas, I labelled her the jizz woman, who signed a bill to fine men $100 for masturbating in private. Quite how she was going to implement that is beyond me, but the fact that it even went to a vote, I find appalling. What a complete and utter waste of energy and money we're putting into these goons called politicians. Here's another one. Texas has passed a bill in the House of Representatives that will essentially force women to buy rape insurance if they seek to have an abortion. Critics of the bill are calling it especially cruel and a detriment to women's health in general, and if put into law, the bill will take effect as soon as December the 1st this year, and force women to buy supplemental plans if they wish to have abortions, even if induced by rape. Now, considering the Senate has already passed a similar measure, and Governor Greg Abbott has already come out publicly showing his support for it, it seems to be they're all thinking that it's only a matter of time before the full bill gets signed. So women and parents will be faced with the, quite frankly, is a horrific decision of having to purchase rape insurance to cover them if they are victimised. Really. It's ridiculous. It's beyond words. It just gets worse by the week, doesn't it? Chris Turner, the Democrat representative, said not only is this ridiculous, but it's cruel. No woman plans to be raped. No parent plans for their child to be a victim of incest. And the idea a woman would be forced to consider purchasing for herself, or a parent would be forced to purchase for their child, essentially a rape insurance policy, should be abhorrent. Not only is it abhorrent, it should also make anyone who signed it struck off as a politician of this country permanently. It's just collecting money for nothing over and over and over again. Now, the bill's sponsor, Republican John Smithy, remember the name, has complained and says it's not that simple. You are, John. That simple. Short bus for you, laddie, methinks. Rape insurance. Mr. Trump made a massive faux pas today. We all make mistakes, but perhaps this type of terminology really doesn't augur too well for the people. Doesn't set a good example. In a discourse today, he says, why are we having all these people from shithole countries come to America? Referring to African countries and Haiti. And then suggested that the United States should bring in more people from countries like Norway. Yeah, Norway and NATO. Norway and CIA safe houses. Oops. It's not good. Not good. It's kind of supporting, although it remains to be seen whether this incident has deeper meanings. But Puerto Rico, of course, I mentioned earlier, 250,000 of them are now residing in Florida, which is kind of overloading the roads. And there's not enough jobs. Not that the officials particularly care. And what will happen is the people who live here will then get bitter at the Puerto Ricans and blame them. It's wrong. It's the people who make the policy that cause, deliberately in my opinion, cause those issues. Of course, Florida's currently struggling because the counties have got a massive shortfall in the region of 900 million in property taxes. Why? because the banks keep foreclosing all kinds of homes illegally. So these same corporations that they have politicians in their pocket are raping from the country from. Perhaps we should get rape insurance from them. Payouts, because they've raped us blind for far too long, in my opinion. So 32 people in the last 11 days have been murdered in Puerto Rico. To put it in context, that's double the number killed in the same period in 2017. Over double. 3 a day. Make of that what you will. So we spent a lot of this hour talking about politicians, and we all think we need them. But you know, Northern Ireland hasn't had a government for 12 months. Has their country collapsed? Is everyone rioting? Is everyone starving? Is there crime everywhere? No. So 12 months ago, Northern Ireland found itself without a government of its own after Deputy Minister Martin McGuinness. Oh dear me. Martin McGuinness, Mr. IRA man, the man who started Sunday Bloody Sunday by firing at the soldiers. Who also wears the badge of Hibernia, which means he's part of the establishment. British at that. Anyway, Mr. McGuinness walked out in a row over a botched energy scheme. What they didn't allow drilling off the coast of Northern Ireland as well. Oh well. The ensuing breakdown in trust between the ruling nationalist and unionist parties shows no sign of being resolved. Now, they're not the only country without a controlling government. Germany also has not had a new government installed following its inconclusive federal election in September. Now, talks in Germany started last Sunday, but it could still be months before new ministers are in place or Merkel's removed. Now, the record for not having a government in Belgium was set in 2010-2011, which led to a 589-day vacuum with no government. And Belgium never collapsed, did it? Spain spent the first 10 months in 2016 in a similar position. And that only ended when the opposition socialists effectively voted to allow the Conservatives to form a minority government, not a majority. Of course, the majority vote in America was no vote. 47%. And it's not difficult to find examples beyond Europe. Somalia had no government for 15 years between 1990s and the 2000s, during which time, of course, a certain military went into there and caused major issues. And so that particular place did have chaos and got ripped apart by clan militias, pirate gangs, and Islamist extremists. No, but I didn't say who they are. Probably said enough already. And Iraq itself went on for much of 2010 without a government, courtesy of the US military wanting to install their own puppet, as we have seen all too often. Right, we're going to have a musical break, and then we're going to come back with some intel and some op-ed pieces, and also some sobering stuff, dear me. And it's all. Hi all, and welcome back to the second hour. Love is what I got. I hope you've all got love, because we're going to need it. It's one of the things they can't take off you. They've tried to take everything else. And the intel for this week will bring a stark reality of what is going on this month, why there's been a dearth of intel in many aspects. Some would argue there's loads of intel and it's all happening. It's not. And I for one wish it was. You know, it's not much fun doing this show each week, discounting things that look promising and discounting people that look promising. And here we are, you know, many of us who joined with Universal Voice 6 years down the line now, and yet on and on it goes. Well, here's why. The RV failed again Monday. Now, all of you who listen to this show regularly know they need to get that to pay off the credit that has been acquired since November of 2016. It's not happening. Yet again, it failed. And it gets funnier, but it's also not funny in some aspects. You know, we all laugh at their stupidity. It goes beyond stupid. Now, the benefits that come from it is every failure of the RV. And there will be another attempt next week, because a major date is coming up on the 19th of this month. It will fail again. They don't have the assets to deliver it. You heard the figures in the first hour. The world's in 233 trillion of debt. Quite who it's owned to is beyond me. The only rational explanation is what I mentioned last year, is that 70% of world trade is off-world. Someone or something is holding this planet hostage. And with every failure, we do get some benefit out of it, because more and more now are seeing through the illusion that they're never going to deliver it. And some of the things our team have been saying, in fact, all of the things our team have been saying has been borne out correct. Just that some people hold on to the lie and the illusion longer than others. Meanwhile, people suffer. And this is what is the source of my angst tonight, and last week for that matter. Well, they carry on playing control games. Everyone else suffer. So there's been a big fallout again, and this is increasing every time that RV fails. There'll be another big fallout next week, and some more individuals will step down. And they're now looking for alternative solutions, which our team have and have had all along. Now, what happened is the information provided of the alternative solutions which would fix every country and clear the debts and money for rebuilding every country. As each country comes on board, and also a major bank, the clans threaten that country, and also those two countries this week, and also a major bank. This is what we're dealing with. And they threatened if they participate outside of their RV financial control system. Now, part of the problem we're facing at this point is there's insufficient people or groups who have a set of balls to deal with these clowns. And the stark reality is the whole world, not just America, is going to hell in a handbasket. Fiscally, all countries and banks are bankrupt. The figures in the first hour tell you that. 233 trillion, roughly 330% of global GDP. That can't be paid back. When I said in the first hour about a future for the children, and to take it back to this country, America is now under serious threat of a government shutdown on January the 19th. The can kicking has its limits. It should have already expired, but they took the bait again. The Rothschilds et al. Promised to deliver the RV, and the same clowns with badges of dishonour accepted it. Over and over and over again. Now each time the can gets kicked down the road and the budget is increases more and more debt and more cutbacks. Again, I mentioned in the first hour, there's something about cutting back on healthcare, food stamps, etc. It cuts back on investment that this country badly needs. It's crumbling. 80,000 bridges in need of urgent repair. That's just one thing off the top of my head. And it creates damage to both the country and, more importantly, its people. But can we get people with a set of balls to deal with it? As it stands, no. You know, we've been sold out to psychopaths. This is the problem in this country in particular. And their only goal is looking after the cabal and their gods. And yes, I did say that right. And that's you in the military. And yes, you in the House, Senate, Congress, and the White House. As in, all of you. Yes, you in the inappropriately named intelligence agencies. And you in the other 3 and 4 letter acronyms who have nothing better to do than to destroy, spy on, and denigrate this country. Now, to all those in those aforementioned groups who have stood up and rejected what is basically collective retardedness, we thank you, each and every one of you. It's just a pity there isn't more who exhibit your courage. It's a pity too few exhibit truth, honour and integrity. and more a case of toothless horror and ineptitude. Currently, as it stands now, and it's been this way for the last few months, which is why we've got distraction blogs, is we're in a Mexican standoff. The cabal and the clans can't move forward as we control what they need. We can't move forward as they park control and or threaten any country or bank who dares to do something beneficial for the people. So we've got what they want, and they partially have what we need. And still it rolls on. And people say, you know, well, you could do this and you could do that. Rest assured, we have tried. And the team has spoken to all the groups and the countries, including the dark elements. I'm not so sure I would be able to restrain myself sitting across a table from some of the goons that have turned up there. And things are, as it stands, a complete impasse. You know, there's senility and fears to control, and it is fear. Only people who are in fear want to control others. It just seems to have no limits. And so that's where we're at. I'm hoping, I always hope, it's not a lost cause. It never is. Is that sufficient people in this country have enough courage? Less talk, more action. We've done the best we could. We've tried negotiating. These clowns are not interested in negotiating unless they control everything. Except they haven't done a good job of it. So why should they control anything? It was in a private industry, all of them would have been sacked. Would you employ these clowns? Trying to implement a policy for 25 years while your company goes bankrupt? Would any private industry have those in charge? So why have we? And the only thing that all the people can do is, Trump's already mentioned it, there's an election this year. Nobody vote. It doesn't take much effort. Actually, it saves. Not standing there like lemons in long lines to just annoy you. You're not running the risk of them changing the computers to alter your vote. And you're not adding to the collective data mining of who you're voting for, when, where and why. Why should we vote for any of these people that they put forward to us when none of them have exhibited anything in the way of benefits for we the people? It's always for this energy giant or this bank or this corporation or this faction or this cabal. And it won't change unless we change it. Expecting politicians to fix things when they've never, ever in American history fixed anything for the benefits of the American people. And that's not just in this country either. The only two governments that I'm aware of that actually did stuff for the people was Gaddafi and Hussein. And people think, some people might go, don't talk ridiculous. Go and look what they did for their people. Paid for the child. Paid for housing. Paid for schooling. All paid for. You know why they could do that? Because they didn't have a Rothschilds bank sucking the lifeblood out of the country, which is what the Rothschilds et al. Have done for hundreds of years. Right, that's the intel. Let's get into some op-ed pieces. Some people have asked about Facebook. I don't think it's going to last long, I've got to be honest. Some of the things said tonight might just tip us off altogether. But people send me friend requests. I don't, unless I really know the person, which is kind of rare, is I don't accept friend requests. If you've got a certain thing that you need to bring to my attention, there's always the email. Friends lists are backdoors into your page. That's why I don't do it. And my particular list has been hacked a number of times, so that's why you'll find I've only got about 60 or 70 friends on my Facebook. So don't feel bad about it. It's just, it is what it is. People should look at their own lists. If you've got more than 400, you're leaving yourself wide open. Now someone sent me an email about how we can fix ourselves, which I covered last week. You can also have to understand you can also make yourself sick by your own words. And so if you believe that, then you can also believe that you can fix yourself by your own words. You often hear people saying, oh, I'm always sick, or I always get bad luck. You've just created your own spell. I never get well, me. Again, you've created your own spell, and this is why you have to be careful with those type of words when it applies to you or something you're projecting at somebody. I've seen people, including one or two in my own family, who basically talked themselves into an early death. One particular cousin was convinced she was going to die early of cancer from age 16. She lasted until 48. She basically talked herself into an early grave. And sickness is the same. And yes, I am aware there's a stomach bug issue going around the awake people. It will pass. So be careful of what you're saying, because it can have implications. You can talk yourself better, and you can also talk yourself into being more sick, and also into an early death. So be careful. Couple of things. QAnon. It's caused a big stir recently. Then it died for the Christmas, and then came back with all kinds of more narrative. And I'm pleased to see that there's some in the community who are now shredding it. Because yet again, this is distraction. I'm not saying there won't be some bits in it that are correct, because there will be. But there's an overall agenda with it. Mass arrests, the military moving in, dates coming and going. They gave 2 dates, the 4th of January and the 10th. Both have come and gone, and Jack has happened. In fact, Jack is going on. And it all sounds very Wilcock and Drake to me. Like I said last week, it's all designed to get you to do nothing. It's a bit like the current government, really. And display passivity. Everything will be done for you, and we, the latest Saviour programme, will all do it for you. You just sit back and you try and work out our mind puzzle games called Intel, and munch on your popcorn. No thanks. No thanks. We have to keep pushing, and we have to keep thinking and acting different if we're going to go forward. We will go forward. There's no question of that. It's not always good news, and it's not always bad news either. We have made giant strides on so many levels. It's just where it largely impacts the public, we haven't seen what we would like. That doesn't mean to say it's all failed. No, it hasn't. There's been numerous examples of where we've made big strides and stopped them doing things. Like last year. Last year was the zombie virus, Zika. Didn't work, did it? The RV. What did it fail about? Another 80 times last year. Agenda 21. They're getting behind, aren't they? So, while some shows will be not great news-wise, there will also be some pluses. This is the up and down nature of what's going on. But I want to say kudos to Daniel Litz at the weekend for covering QAnon quite well, I thought, with Joseph Farrell. I thought they dug into it rather well. I still don't trust him too much, I have to say. Daniel List is the fact that his radio show address is in the same building as an intelligence agency. It's all a bit too fishy for me, but I will give credit where credit's due, and I thought that was nicely covered. Yellow Rose for Texas. One of the members posted it, and it's a 2-hour video, and I thought it was really well done, and it covers some of what gets relayed in this show from time to time and other shows, but it also delves deeper into certain topics that you will find interesting. It says 2 hours, the video is 2 hours, but you're gonna probably need 3 hours to watch it, because some of the graphics go by rather quickly and you need to read them, and you need to pause quite a bit so you can grasp it. But it was very well done. Well, some people this week have asked me, did I not discount Yellow Rose for Texas in the past? And yes, I did. And for the simple reason that she was putting out bullshit. And but around 2 years ago, she realised her sources were wrong, and she did apologise to her listeners, readers, followers, and I'm good with that. You know, we've all made mistakes, including me, and kudos to her for owning up. And perhaps a show not too far from here could very well do the same, but I suspect we'll have a long wait for that. But go and watch the latest Yellow Rose for Texas. It covers the God stuff I mentioned earlier, and some of the word magic. And what I thought was interesting, because I've never seen them before, is a film in the 1920s about worship of Moloch, the owl in Bohemian Grove, who feeds on the children. And there's an actually movie showing them putting kids inside the fiery owl. This tells you how long these shenanigans have been going on. That was a silent movie, 1927 I think it was. So kudos to her for finding that and putting it in. So go and watch that. Mentioning zombies, it also tells you in that most of you will be familiar with it anyway, the corporation capital letters stuff, and technically we're all dead. Your driver's license, which it is, and your birth certificate is in capital letters, it means you are dead. Or perhaps it's us, that's the zombies that need to rise up again and claim our life back, and our property for that matter. What I did find sad, I put out a warning on Saturday, I think, is to expect more fun and games in California. Sadly, that didn't prevent, 17 deaths this week. As yet again, more weather manipulations is emptying out more and more people and more properties in California. The people who have the means of enforcement really need to grow a set and quickly before we have nothing left. You're not doing this country any favours whatsoever. Another thing that would at the height of irony in America, and there has been a debate about giving votes to former felons, and I think it's ironic they don't allow previous felons to vote on current felons. You can't make this stuff up, can you? You've been a naughty boy, or girl for that matter, and you went to prison, so you can't vote. We've been naughty boys and girls, but you can't vote for us. It's a bit like the street corner drug dealer. The guy dealing, or girl dealing drugs on the street corner gets picked up by the cops and gets taken to jail. And yet behind that guy or girl selling those drugs is Walgreens and CVS, also selling drugs. But they get primetime TV advertisements. Strange world. Where are we next? I'll have to mention that because the announcement this week of Oprah. Oh dear me. I mean, some say we get what we deserve as a president, because it's based on the people. But I refuse to believe that the American people are as bad as the presidents we've had over the last 30 to 40 years. They're just not. I mean, we've gone to basically what they're putting forward now is we're going to go from a game show host president to a chat show host president. Is that all we've got? Is that the only level of drivel they can offer to the American public? And is this what we're all about as Americans? Drama queens as the president? Surely we have someone amongst the alternative community to put forward and get the whole community to support it. And put our own people in. Not what they offer us. And we, like little robots, go and vote. No. We have to I've said it for long enough now, we have to replace all of them. Because not one of them is legitimate. Not one of them is not in the back pockets of some corporation or some lobbyist. Apparently there's at least 6 lobbyists for every politician. Of course, there was an earthquake yesterday. I'm still waiting to see what damage that caused. I would suggest to watch that area closely, because if you look on the map of the incidents, you'll see a pattern. Giant circle. Don't be surprised if you see more refugees from Honduras, Belize, Cayman Islands. Meanwhile, we're telling El Salvadorians and others to get out of our country. And calling other countries shitholes. Really. A name that's propped up this week, Eric Prince. This will get me into a bit of trouble as well. He's the Blackwater, what's more familiarly known as Blackwater, which then morphed into Z, and it's the mercenary group. The name changes, but the purpose of that group doesn't. Now, Mr. Prince is a hired hitman or cabal security guy, depending on who pays, where and when. They don't particularly care about life or who they work for. It's just who pays the money. Now, Eric Prince, which I mentioned last year and even late the previous year, is working with Donald Trump. And there's also Dick Cheney's escort. So that tells you what sort of guy he is. And previously stated on another show, he's been working in Asia for the last number of years, from what I gather, building a robot army for an attack and use in Africa. Whether that comes to fruition is another matter. That's kind of the team that's protecting. I'm not too sure I'd want that team anywhere near. But this is what we're dealing with. Now, people have noticed how much of our show's material is not only used elsewhere, but also it's shown that our shows were ahead of the game in many respects, providing you you have a long memory. Now, last no, it wasn't last year, it was 2016, I mentioned about BLM. BLM was spoken to and stepped down for what they were involved in, Bureau of Land Management, and are actually, in some cases, helping, or they were from what I heard last. And they're being used as the negative front for the feds. So when you hear BLM being taking this land and BLM taking that land, it's not. Unless it's changed in the last few months, and I would have been notified if it has. Replace BLM with the term Fed. They're the ones who are moving people off lands. And of course, I just mentioned Eric Prince. I mentioned him a long time back. I also mentioned about Trump, AIPAC, Zionist connections. You'll hear evidence. In fact, I'm going to play it now. He had doubts of Mr. Trump and his Jewish connections, or not Jewish, I'll correct that, Zionist connections. This is a piece from 1999, 19 years ago, where this particular guy was warning about the Jewish influence in American politics and the country and its banking. It's only a minute long. I've cut it out of a longer interview, but if you had any doubts, listen to this.
The Democratic Jews to apply pressure to the principal Gentile Republican candidate to shut another Gentile Republican candidate out of the election, then you still have a lot to learn about Jews. There are many other Jewish leaders and organizations involved in this effort to stifle Buchanan. The forward article lists, for example, leaders of the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations, the American Jewish Committee, and so on. One of the most interesting recommendations in the forward article is that the Jews themselves should stay in the background in their campaign against Buchanan and should use Gentile frontmen as their tools against Buchanan. Men such as Republican candidate George Bush Jr., New York real estate developer Donald Trump, and Arizona Republican Senator John McCain.
That was from 1999. Of course, time and opinions can change, but the evidence is kind of overwhelming. I don't think it's a coincidence that Kushner is the son-in-law either. Kushner is going to get exposed badly this year. For those that don't know, I did a piece last year, and I've tried to find it, about Kushner and the group Vornado. Now, somebody did a post recently on it, but we did a piece in the show, I think it was in the summer. Vornado is the company connected with Kushner in 666 Fifth Avenue, is it? Now, people may remember, because it was connected to 9/11, Jared Kushner and his group were going to purchase the two Twin Towers. And there was arguments. The deal was done in the March before the September, and there was arguments going on over the lease. And right at the end, Mr. Silverstein stepped in and bought them outright. Because Silverstein was the one that mentioned pulling Building 7. Not just 1 and 2, Building 7. So they were involved in the Twin Towers. Kushner and the group Vornado. For those of you, again, with long memories, Why was there no Jews or Jewish people at work that day? It wasn't a holiday. You look up the records. This is New York. This is the finance center. Like law, it's dominated by the Jewish people. They're trained from a young age to go into those fields. And this connection, people might think I'm being racist. I'm not. I feel as much sympathy with the Jewish people as I do with the American people for having to endure clowns running the country. We're all being used as pawns. Now, so the Trump issue was put out way ahead of time, and the links with AIPAC and the Zionists. Cindy Courier has vanished this week because she's been exposed. Don't be surprised if it rears its ugly head again with a new brand of hopium and being and doing bullshittery. Courier was exposed 4 years ago. Data miner acts like she's got intel and she's got nothing. So she's gone. Simon Parkes was another one that this show exposed issues about. But I need to thank Randy Morgans for his input on that also. In fact, many of our previous shows have covered the stuff that's ahead of time. And his, for that matter. And yet, isn't it curious that neither of us have been invited to participate in other shows or platforms? And I find that odd. I do. It's probably for the best. From an overview point of view. But you do get me drift. Of course, the Corey Good exposure was 20 months ahead of most of the alternative media on this show. The Faction Show. Again, near 2 years ahead. The 4-year loop was kind of ahead of its time. But those last two were unique to this show. Did we get the credit? No, we didn't. But that's okay. Because the people in our group know where it came from, and that's all that matters to me. What you'll find is the many things that I've started doing over the past 6 months, I think it is, around 6 months, what I said things to ponder on. You will find that will provide a lot of discourse over this coming year. Now, whether it's validated, only time will tell, but you will see it. Another thing I did this week is I was shown a video, and what astounded me more than anything, and this is a sign of the times and a more positive look, is the overwhelming rise in other people doing videos in just this past week, all against the Rothschilds. I couldn't believe it. I know you look down YouTube and it says show more, and it went on and on. Just in this past week. That is not a coincidence. That's some of them in the agencies who have had enough of the Rothschilds. And finally, says I and all of you also, as you all know, with the help of Miss Manor, we have exposed the Rothschilds more than most shows. pretty much the entirety of this show about how much of a problem the Rothschilds have been. They're not the be-all and end-all of the problems, but they do wield a big stick and threaten a lot. They also have failed to pay a lot of their minions, which means those minions get pissy. Or maybe they'll do us all a favour. Now, one thing I heard this week, and the reason I watched the video, and it kind of intrigued me in some aspects, is the embassy move by Donald Trump. And according to this video, and if it's correct, I'll hold my hands up if proven correct. I don't mind admitting I'm wrong. I'd sooner you all got the truth than me be right. But there's a possibility that Trump and team moved the embassy to Jerusalem to stop Rothschilds taking over the whole of Jerusalem. Because according to them and their psychotic mind, they think they own the whole of Jerusalem. They also think they own the whole of the District of Columbia, except papers we provided prove that not to be the case. They think they own everything. I would like to suggest a better piece of real estate for the Rothschilds. 4 walls, 8 foot by 6 foot with bars. You can only like it that, as long as you throw away the key. So I'm hoping that is actually beneficial. And if it is, like I said, I'll hold my hand up. Anything that stops the Rothschilds, I'm up for, because they need to be stopped. Now, everyone's heard about the Balfour Declaration, or most of you have anyway. I was reading more elements of it, and something had come up that made me ponder. Of course, I already am aware of their connections and off-world, the Hebrews and the Anunnaki. But they called it, the Balfour document, they called it the Zionist Federation. Now, federation, as we all know, by the alternative community, is normally reserved for off-world groups. Fits nicely in with things, don't you think? With the caliphate that I've mentioned, which people still are not picking up on. The gods reclaiming that land again and using the Jewish people as pawns. It's an easy ploy. All you have to do is tell one group they're more special than others. And you know it always leads to confrontation, anger, jealousy. And then the Cabal Classic program, divide and conquer. The Anunnaki were known as the chosen ones. The Hebrew people are also known as the chosen people. They're taught from a young age that they're more special than everybody else, and everyone else is not fit to shine their shoes. Gentiles. This is programming. And it's not the Jewish people's fault. They've been led down the garden path as much as we have, with Christianity and all the other BS. But this is a far more dangerous path, and why I choose to highlight it, because the Hebrew Jewish people are waiting for Armageddon. They want the Armageddon, the Third World War that ends all wars, because they believe they're not going to die. Only the Gentiles, the non-Jews, will die, because they're the chosen ones. Sounds like a cult to me. In case you don't believe it, here's a few passages out of the Torah and the attitude towards Gentiles, as they call non-Jews. The Torah of Israel makes a clear distinction between a Jew, who is defined as a man, and a Gentile. Laws in regard to murder, which clearly state that there is a halachic difference between the murder of a Jew and of a Gentile. The latter is considered a far less severe crime. A ban on desecrating the Sabbath to save the life of a Gentile. A Jew's exemption from liability if his property causes damage to a Gentile's property. But if a Gentile's property causes damage to a Jew's property, the Gentile is liable. The question of whether robbery of a Gentile is forbidden by the Torah's law or only by rabbinic decree. A ban on returning a lost item to a Gentile if the reason for returning it is one's sympathy towards the Gentile and compassion for him. The sum which a Gentile overpays in a business transaction due to his own error is always forfeited. Whether a Jew is permitted to intentionally deceive a Gentile is also discussed. One who kidnaps a Jew is liable to death, but one who kidnaps a Gentile is exempt. A Jew who hurts or injures a Gentile is not liable for compensation of damage, but a Gentile who hurts a Jew is liable to death. One who overcharges a Gentile ought not to return the sum that the Gentile overpaid. A Gentile, or even a convert to Judaism, may not be appointed king or a public official of any sort, i.e. a cabinet minister. One who defames a female proselyte, claiming that she was not a virgin at the time of her marriage, is liable to either lashes nor fine. The prohibition to hate only applies to Jews. One may hate a Gentile. One may take revenge against or bear a grudge against Gentiles. Likewise, the commandment, love your neighbour, applies only to Jews, not to Gentiles. One who sees Gentile graveyards should curse, your mother shall be greatly ashamed, and Gentiles are likened to animals. If an ox, that's property, damaged a Gentile maid servant, it should be considered as though the ox damaged a she-ass. The dead body of a Gentile does not bear ritual impurity, nor does a Gentile who touches the dead body of a Jew become impure. He is considered like an animal who touched a dead body. One is forbidden to pour anointing oil on a Jew, but there is no ban on pouring that oil on a Gentile, because Gentiles are likened to animals. An animal slaughtered by a Gentile is forbidden, even if the ritual slaughter performed was technically correct, because Gentiles are deemed like animals. Their members, genitals, are like those of asses. That's the Torah. That's what the unfortunate Jewish people are taught. You know, this is why they think everything belongs to them. But these people, like I said, I have as much sympathy with the Jews as I do the Americans. We're pawns. And the sooner we all get together and realise that and take these clowns on, the better. Because they will throw the Jewish people under the bus. If caliphate goes ahead, they will get thrown out the other side of the wall also. They don't care. They were used for a political game, an agenda. And the poor Jewish people have suffered because of that agenda. 106 countries they've been thrown out of in 200 years. That's not because of the average Jewish person. Oh no. This is because of the bankers and control thieves with the Zionist agenda, like the Rothschilds. Now, the Hebrews are Anu, the king of the Anunnaki. He chose them as the chosen people. But the people, as I've said, have been used as a heavy hitter pawn in a chess game here. The monopoly game also, given their role in the banking. And the average Jewish person has no idea what is being done in their name. Like I said, they're just pawns also. But a word of warning to the Jewish people. You don't think they leaked out the fact that 80 to 90% of you are not Hebrew for a reason, do you? They're setting the stage. Be careful. Now, many of them, of those 80 to 90%, may be glad they no longer are connected to that unsane machinations of their creator or engineered program by the Anunnaki, because that was their region long in the past. So why would it be revealed now? They must have known that a long time ago. They're setting them up. Like I warned the Californians 4 years ago, they're going to empty the state out unless you do something. I'll give the same warning to the people of Israel. They're going to empty you as well as the Palestinians out unless you do something. They're already doing it. They're trying to force you out of the region with the weather wars and the droughts. 4 years now running into 5 years of drought, which means no food, lack of crops. And you can call it biblical scriptures and prophecies all you like. It's not prophecy, it's planning, weather manipulation, and will force you out. It's always been an agenda, and they'll, like I said, they'll throw those people under the bus when it suits their agenda. It always does. And this is the last piece before we go into a music break. And this is not much more pleasant either. Well, it's actually worse. I kept mentioning about the 500,000 children that go missing permanently each year in America alone. That was the low end figure. But that one's bad enough. I finally managed to get hold of the global figure. It's 8 million. 21,917 children per day go missing on this planet, never to be seen again. When you add in the fact that 27,000 children who die from malnutrition and disease each day, That brings the total to 49,000 children gone. Hi all, and welcome back When the Children Cry Indeed. And this is why we're involved in this. And it's unpleasant. You can't get away from it. It's unpleasant. And the figures are staggering. Well, if some people are upset by it, and you should be, or you think it's futile, at least now we know that in itself is a positive improvement. It's not pleasant to hear, as a lot of these shows, it's not just my show, Randy's show and the OYM lads and many others, and Shane with his blog telling you about what goes on with the unsane people. David Icke, even Wilcock early years put out some good stuff, all exposing the hidden elements. And it only feels bad now, or worse now, is because of the clown QAnon. And also because Trump said he was going to drain the swamp. Where you've elevated, and we've all done it, you've elevated thinking things are going to happen. And things have already happened, make no mistake. You will see famous people, known names being removed this year. You will see it. But always recognise it's not for the benefit of the people as it stands. We will get benefits out of it. There's no question of that. Because if Hitler goes down, McCain and others, people in the alternative media will be pleased. But look at the names they're putting forward. Hillary Clinton. She died in September of 2016. They've been operating with doubles and or clones. John McCain is dying. George Soros died in November of 16. Which is why Black Lives Matter went quiet last year. Funding stopped. And why they dissolved his estate last year. They put it under a different terminology. But clans like Soros doesn't give 18 billion away. They're the three names, plus Netanyahu, that I've been told. Others have had their passport taken off them. But they all have a common theme. Deadwood, or dead people. What we want to see is justice for people who are not dead and not dying. We want to see justice applied to all those that are acting wrong against all the people around this world. Not just this country, all countries. Some countries outside of the limelight ones have started cleaning house. You've seen evidence of that, where they've been thrown out under the guise of fraud and corruption. I can tell you now, that's not the reason they were booted. There's far more heinous elements connected to some of those people that were thrown out. So there is beneficial aspects that will be garnered. But that's why I did the faction show, so people will understand. They still want to retain control, but only one element of that control. One group, one faction. And eventually we have to remove that faction as well. The danger from, and why I keep warning of it, and until I see Trump do something for the benefit of the people, I will continue to call him out. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. To me, you know, I'll be doing a show a week on Sunday where basically I'm going to be questioned on the material that I've put out over the last 18, 19, 20 months. Accountability, that's called. And that's fair. So why aren't we holding politicians accountable? Drilling around the country for when we've already got an oil glut. Why do we need that? Well, clearly we don't. When the job market is going down and down, and the hourly wages is going down, and the hours are going down, but they're telling you it's full employment. No, it's not. And that's when you need a backup system. But they want to take from both ends. So eventually we end up, America itself, like a third world country, which is what the elites want to do. And they're being facilitated by so-called top brass in this country. And if they don't like what I'm saying, correct the ways. You've got children also. You goons in the agency. You've got children. You think they're going to get a special ticket? They're not. You're just puppets like the Israeli people. Puppets like the British people under the fake British Empire. Puppets like people in Italy under Rome. Fake pharaohs in Egypt at the behest of Rome and their gods. I could go on and on and on. It's the same stunt played over and over again, and we have to be vigilant and wary of where we're putting our attention and our alliance and our trust. Because until they have to me, every politician has to prove his or her trust before I'm jumping in with any of them. Because history tells you that none of them have done anything for us. If Trump turns out great, absolutely fantastic. But he has to prove it. And 12 months down the line, with some of the stuff he's done, particularly in linked with Israel and Saudi Arabia, it doesn't augur too well. And I will continue to speak out. They have to prove to us that they're worthy of our trust. And we must always remember that. They have to prove to us that they're worthy of our trust. We can't go blindly believing them. We've done that, and successive generations have done that, thinking they're going to fix things. They don't. But the fact that so much stuff is coming out now, and a lot of it, I've said it right from the very first show, when truth comes out, it's going to be ugly. It's not going to be pleasant to hear. And trust me, it's not pleasant to say. I don't want to be talking about 49,000 children going missing or dying permanently per day. Being an empath and speaking that, it hurts. Boy, does it hurt. But it hurt more not knowing it. Because they just when you don't know what's going on, they just carry on. And this is the difference now. Too many of us know what's going on. And this is why the QAnons and the adverts on TV taking the piss out of the alternative media. You'll have all seen the Taco Bellends advert. They're taking the piss. And the other one, the fake moon landing. Again, it's taking the piss out of the alternative media. QAnon is another one. Get them all distracted. Get them all mass arrests. The military's moving. Some unknown space marines or space cadets, more likely, are going to move and drain the swamp. Like I said before, it's all very Wilcock and Drake-esque, isn't it? Oh, just another 2 weeks, just another this, just another 3 months. Wait till January the 4th, wait till January the 10th, and wait till January the 20th, and they all come and go. And I know you're all tired, and so am I. It's a lot of time to put this show together each week. And all we ask is for the people in positions to do something. The ones with the guns, the ones with the weapons, the ones with the enforcement and clout to do something, to do their jobs. We have the structure to change the world. We have the means. Everything is ready to roll. We've ended the Draco. There's no real need now for humans to be in fear. There's no real need to play the same game the gods and the goons that came before us and replicate that behaviour. There's just no need. All of you in the cabal, you've all made your money. You've all got your badges and your bogus titles and all this malarkey. And then you find out that so is a whole heap of other people in the other group. Why don't you do something different? This is what was said in one of the meetings upstairs with various representatives of various races. You've been fighting for millennia. Over what? Where's it got you? Nowhere. Just lost loads and loads of people. Sacrificed soul dyers. Sacrificed your own race. Sacrificed the whole planetary systems. There's a whole big universe out there. There's room enough and plenty enough for everybody. So instead of millennia of wars, why don't we try something different? A millennia of peace. Where the role is to build, not destroy. Research, is about development of the planet and the species, or species that are on it. Not how you can subvert them. Investment in the people on the planet. Not how you can control and obliterate it. So we will get by eventually. I said this at the end of last year. We will win this war. And I think people forget we are in a war. The ultimate one. And in essence, we have already won. But we've forgotten, and I'll use a Shane term, we've forgotten how to collect the win. In soccer terms, there's an open goal, no one around, and the forward is 1 foot from the line. He just has to kick the ball over the line. And he's standing there scratching his head. So, horrible stuff coming out. In essence, is another step towards freedom. Because if you don't know what the problem is, there is no solution, because there is no problem. And as each layer comes out, which is not only what I put out, because everyone that listens to this show goes out and disseminates to other people. So you've all played the role in it. And as each layer comes out, more and more cracks in their system develop. And it's cracked on every level as it stands. And we just need to get over that final hurdle, or kick that ball into the empty goal. But it takes courage. You people, and I know you listen to this show, and you know who I'm referring to. It's time you did something for the benefit of the people of this country. And the same applies in every other country. But this is the main battlefield. This one goes down, the rest will follow, like a pack of cards. This was the one country, the cabal, wanted to take down. They knew it would be the most difficult. And the reason being is there's a lot of rebels from Europe that built this country up. And there's also a lot of guns. They're terrified that people are going to use it on them. That's why they cling to power with every means possible. But perhaps now, the method or idea I put forward 4 years ago, that was poo-pooed by the show host, and I have to say, some of the members, you perhaps now realise why I said, with disclosure should come disclaimer. Yes, we know how bad they've been. But how long do we continue of wanting that revenge or that justice and allow the planet to be destroyed with 49,000 children per day? At what point do we go, well, that's their justice, but they won't escape justice. They have their own justice to deal with. Whether we give them justice or not, they still have their own justice and life review to come. Oh boy, that's not going to be pleasant. Pick time. And maybe it's something those at the top end may have to consider. The chance to move forward. The chance to move forward should override everything. But that's just my opinion. I'm not asking people to agree to it. But given what I've seen, what I've been shown, what I've witnessed, and what I've heard, these people will just carry on and carry on and carry on, and while we're carrying on, more and more people are dying, more and more people are getting ill, more and more people are struggling. And the planet's sick. Because its people are sick. Sick in ill health and sick in mind. So I ask all the listeners to this show, is it revenge justice that is required, or rebuilding? Is it our role to enforce justice? 4 or 5 years ago I just said, yes it is. We need those people to pay, but they will pay regardless of whether we bring them to justice or their own review, because they will not be getting what they want, which is the transhumanist life longevity, which means they don't have to go through a life review. They don't have to return to source. That's their end goal, because they won't face their own shit. They'll have to one day. So it's something I would like all listeners, and it's fine if you disagree, just don't be nasty. But I'm beginning to think I was more and more right 4 years ago. Disclosure comes with full disclaimer. If I was asked to vote, that would be the way forward, because that then takes away a lot of the fear that the cabal are under. And boy, are they in fear. They're terrified. They always were. They're more frightened of us than we are of them. Trust me. But I don't want to go through another year waiting for Trump or anybody else, QAnon and his magic army, whilst they completely destroy this country from inside. I don't think any of us want that. And it's maybe time for the enforcement to pull a few out and watch them quiver. Right, kind of rambled on a bit there, but I think it needed to be addressed. We have made giant strides. That should never be overlooked, despite all the unpleasant news. The fact that we're all still here and fighting is the biggest bonus, because according to them, should have all been gone 6 years ago. And we're not. And we will win. In essence, like I've said, we've already won. It's just a matter of getting over the final hurdles and dealing with what is now a frequently panicked cabal. Right, have we got time for some questions? Maybe one or two. Do you have any intel you can share on the miniature drone attack on the Russian bases in Syria? Not direct, no. I would suggest it's the same elements out of Virginia playing games again. Either that or the ISIS people that were allowed to flee. Remember that story a few months ago? Same people again. When they roll out 5G worldwide, we're getting fried with these microwave frequencies. How can we stop that? There's plans to do that once we remove the clowns. Frequencies can harm. Frequencies also heal. There's no saying we can't have Wi-Fi with healing frequencies. At some point in your show, could you ask the Th&I folks listening to take a couple of minutes each day to focus intention as a group on sending some kind of interference towards chemtrail activity? Well, every time you see them, try and counteract it. Sometimes it works, not all, but sometimes it does. And thanks for that reminder. That's another example of draining the swamp and doing things for them by the people. America first, while we've been absolutely splattered with chemtrails 12 months into his presidency. Enough's enough. Is the $18 billion wall to be built between America and Mexico and contracted primarily to Mexican contractors that are here legally to really keep them out or us in? And should we let this happen? I think we have far more valid things to spend $18 billion on than a ridiculous wall. It's more divide and conquer. Who does divide and conquer? The cabal. You know, Trump can say different, but just look at the news in the first hour, how contradictory it was. We don't want people from shithole countries, but we'll have some Norwegians. We don't want Mexicans, so we'll build a wall, but we'll bring Puerto Ricans in. That's just in the news this week. So what's it to be? Are they all coming in or are they all going out? You can't have, well, you know, it's not like a pick and mix. It was basically what they're saying is, or the Trump team is saying is, that some people are better than others. This is why we fail. because the Israeli people believed they are better than others, and everyone else was shit under the shoe. Well, no, we're not. All peoples have a common enemy. And once all peoples rise up, that common enemy goes away. It's just divide and conquer. It continues. Some in, some out, in, out. It's like the okey cokey. Except these are people's lives they're messing with. They're doing the same in California. So I don't think it's just happening to other countries. They did it to the people in New Orleans as well. Was the Oracle of Delphi a marketing technique? In essence. She wasn't channeling Apollo. That's the Draco goons again. And they knew it, but they could get certain kings and queens from all over the world to listen to the Oracle, except she was telling them a pile of crap. And like Cassandra, she was cursed. Are the Van Allen belts actually a torus field that holds our electromagnetic energy? Not to my understanding. Don't know a great deal about that. I can't even actually prove that the Van Allen belts exist, because it's based on our understanding of science, of which is limited, to my knowledge anyway. Is there also an ocean in the hellish realms? Yeah. There's I presume you mean by the hellish realms is the lower astral. Of course, there's all the extinct beings there. So there's extinct fish and some large ones as well. Megadon and all that stuff. And certain large kraken type things. They're in waters. Some of them are not there anymore. In your estimation, how long before we reach unity consciousness? And you probably won't want to hear my answer on that. As it stands now, trying to get 6 people to be in unity is bad enough. We've done well with Th&I, but in case you haven't noticed, there's divide and conquer everywhere else. And that's why I'd love the opportunity when the clowns are dealt with, in whatever manner, to expand the ways that we encourage in Th&I with the foundation, to get everyone acting the same way, not in robotic fashion or like a cult, or caring and sharing for each other. Doesn't cost nothing. Showing somebody love doesn't cost nothing. They can't take that away from you. And if we all cared and shared for each other, we wouldn't tolerate what we're tolerating now. We just wouldn't. So it's an open-ended question. There's no definitive time. Certain things can be sped up rather quickly. Like everything else, things can go viral very quickly. At the moment, they're blocking all those paths because they don't want the people in unity. I read out a passage from, was it Genesis, I think it was, where it stated the Lord came down and introduced different languages because the peoples were working together and forming groups together and understanding things together. So the Lord, who's Anu, came down and introduced new languages so they wouldn't understand each other. And when people don't understand each other, people have fear of each other. Everyone who listens will all laugh, and you've all done it when there's been people talking in a foreign language next to you, and you've gone, I wonder if they're talking about me. Fear. Now you create that on a mass scale from country to country, and you've got a load of Americans terrified that the Russians are coming, a load of Americans terrified that the Muslims are coming to get them. It then becomes a program. So once we start reaching out to each other and setting the example that it's okay to be loving towards one another, it's okay to care and share to one another and look after each other. So then the people that aren't doing it get rather uncomfortable. Like we have been made uncomfortable because we're outside the system. But if we reverse it, then the ones that sit on the fence are going to quickly jump off, but suddenly they're seeing their numbers disappear. The service to self, the I, me, greed, competition, comparative mind. We eliminate or certainly drastically reduce that to us, we, caring and sharing, then everything changes. And they can make whatever rules they like. They can't stop that. They can't stop somebody else caring for each other. Do the stars hold all our past life memories? No, you do. Just learn to pluck it out of the field. Is this the year Big Pharma crashes and burns? I hope so. Drug dealers, legalised drug dealers, who know their products don't work. 90% of drugs do not work on 60% of the people, as said by the CEO of one of the top pharmaceutical companies. And yet they're still allowed to operate, but we still take them. Please stop it. If you're on certain drugs for whatever things, try and phase it out. Don't go cold turkey. Try and phase it out and see if there's an alternative that doesn't poison your system, because all drugs are poison. And if you keep poisoning your system, your immune system will crash. And it takes 6 months of being virus and disease free for your immune system to fully recover. If you have a mild cold or a flu, it will take 6 months for your immune system to recover. Well, if you're putting poisons in it, it's never recovering, isn't it? Until you stop taking them. Stupid bloody sister I've told her time and time again, and her boyfriend, partner, has got some sort of a calf injury and gives him ibuprofen. I'm like, hello, McFly. Yeah, but it yeah, but it takes away inflammation. Yeah, but it also strips all your good bacteria in your stomach, so it makes you sick. So just absorb a little bit of pain, or put something topical on it, hot and cold, rather than ingesting poisons. That's going to wipe all your good flora out of your stomach. Be great to have an update from Miss Manor on current affairs. Yes, it would. But team's rather busy. And when we have something relevant, we will have 1, 2, 3 or more shows on that. So effects of the chemtrail and the really patterns on the west coast, there are patterns east and west coast of Florida. We've been absolutely splattered over the last month, and it's time Trump either does what he said he was going to do, or people have to let him go as a bad mistake and realise he's now a problem. Because you're going to hear all kinds of fluff and stuff now, because suddenly we're in the election year again. This is the primaries. I don't understand it. I think it's the primaries coming up in November, the half-year term. And all the goons and the clowns and the deceivers are all going to suddenly appear out of their hibernation to the public, telling a stream of lies of what they're going to do for them, and then they disappear again until the next election, when, heaven forbid, we end up with Oprah. But then if the people are going to continue to vote for clowns, clowns is what we'll get. I hope this election coming up this year, we have near to zero voting, because then they have a big problem. They realise then the public's not playing their game no more. Then something has to be done. 47% never voted in the last election. It was the highest. It was actually the winner of the election. Non-vote. Not blue or red pill. Neither. Not Republican or Democrat. Neither. And that's how the public fight back. It doesn't take guns. It just takes non-violent, non-compliance. We're not playing your game. We're not buying your 5G phones. I'm going to carry on with my 3G, 4G. We're not buying your 5G phones. Eventually, they have no option. Because then the people have really spoken. It's not just the alternative media then, who are then not compliant with their game. It's the sleepers as well. Because if voter turnout is less than 20%, that's an embarrassment. If it goes over 50%, it means half of this country is now not interested in government. None. It was 47% last time. Do you think all the people that voted Trump on the back of doing this and doing that are going to vote again? Maybe not. So that I'm hoping that 47% goes to somewhere in the high 60s or 70 or even better. 100%. Because then their government, the USA Inc., remember, not the American government, will then cease to exist. Because the public have decided we no longer want your form of government, and then we can create our own, in our image, not theirs. And that's the path forward. It's, like I said, at times things are sobering, and the message is sobering, and the shows are sobering, and it's not pleasant. But everything that gets revealed is another crack in their armoury, and those cracks are getting wider and wider. Never forget that. The one thing the cabal want you to do is to walk away. Like Cassandra sending me a stupid little message this week. My answer was, F you. Because I ain't stepping down until this is finished. And I hope you will follow me with it. And on that note, we're going to end another week. I'm hoping next week we'll have something a little bit more positive. But at the moment, it's, like I said, it's a bit of an impasse. We hope those that have balls learn to expand them. We hope that those who are insane seek medical help immediately and step down. And we hope all those that are on the front line all stay safe and have renewed vigour and conviction to end this nonsense and take us all forward. And more importantly, give the children a future. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. I'll be back on Sunday, all being well, with Hayden Ellis, one of the members for An Evening with Thomas. And the following Sunday I will be on OYM. And that should be fun. I'm going to leave it with this, which was said by an ET when they were discussing things with some of the military. And they said as follows: just try to accept we are in paradise when we are seeing and understanding something new. Our God should be change. Our religion should be understanding. Searching for truth is our greatest social challenge and purpose. My name's Thomas Williams. Bye for now.